Greetings, fam. This is Rom Wills about that business. Why don't you get a job? Now, every single entrepreneur, every single person who's actually taken the steps to make their dreams come true, regardless of the profession, regardless of the vocation, have heard those terms from somebody who is otherwise well-meaning. They'll say to the person, they'll see the person struggling because, you ain't going, if you're an entrepreneur, you are not going to hit the home run out of the box. Heck, you ain't even going to get a base at your first at bat. It's a tough road. It's like, let's have no pretenses about it. The entrepreneurial road is a tough one. And your friends and family, loved ones, they see this. Your spouses, they see this. And, at some point when they see you struggling, barely making money, probably not paying bills, or, maybe even having the power turned off or something like that. Because, you going to face all that as an entrepreneur. You're going to face some duck and bill collectors. You're going to face some turn-off notices. That's just the nature of the game. But then you have somebody who will say, well, why don't you get a job? Well, first of all, they don't understand the life. That's the first thing. They do not understand what it means to really get out on your own. But there's something else about that whole job thing. A big problem with most people out here is they don't pay attention to the economy and what's happening on jobs. I mean, forget the news. Forget what you see on the news about the economy doing this, that, and the third. We all know somebody who's looked hard for a job and didn't find it. And one of the reasons they might not find it, the job might not be there. Because it's easy for someone to say, oh, there's plenty of jobs. Well, you know what? Not really. I remember when I needed to get a part-time job or, something back in 2006, right? And, I'm looking through the local newspaper and the job listings, which ironically, I found a job, but the job listings took up like half a page. Now, fast forward, go back to 1996, 10 years before, and you talking about a whole section that might have been 10 pages. And even if you check online, you don't have a lot out there. People say get a job like there's an abundance of jobs, but depending on where you live, the job situation might be sparse. But your well-meaning relatives, they always say, well, why don't you get a job? I know some people have heard, well, you can always work for the government. Well, you gotta have specialized knowledge to even think about that. It's a competitive process, and plus, what people don't know, especially elders who say get you a government job, is that much government work, especially at the federal level, is done by contractors, which means you have to find that company that's supplying the services. And that's a tough process. Trust me. That credit card payment you missed 5 years ago, oh yeah, that comes back to haunt you. So it's that's a tough process. And then I remember when people used to say, well, you can always get a job at the post office. I'll never forget what, I was getting my mail one day, talked with the mailman, right? And he had been in the postal service for a long time. And he said something very interesting. He said he gets paid $80,000 a year to deliver junk mail. And a lot of people, people don't use the mail service like they used to. The only reason it's surviving is it's put a lot of emphasis on shipping packages. Basically, it's become a cheaper competitor to UPS. But that's how I'm surviving, because I mean, you don't need a letter or anything. You don't need to send letters. You can just send a text. So the jobs, I mean, even some old standbys, they're not really there like they used to be. And here's another thing about that. It's not even so much the jobs are disappearing, but many people seem like they don't know where jobs come from. They come from the very person or type of person that they telling to get a job. Now, many people work retail. I'll use that as a great example. Work retail in these big department stores. And, it's a good job source depending on where you at. Or something like Walmart, right? I'll use Walmart as an example because Walmart is actually the leading employer in several states. Which, that might be an issue considering that many of the employees still has to have state assistance. But that's another video. But if you really look at Walmart, how did it get started? It didn't just magically pop up. Sam Walton, an entrepreneur, had to start the business. See, the one thing people, they get caught up, they think many people who say, hey, why don't you get a job? They act like somebody else always has it, but they never think, or they've never been close to the people who actually create jobs. Now, yeah, you might be struggling now, but that might not always be the case. And then some people, they might struggle in one area and then they just start a business in someplace else. Sometimes people are successful in a business and they just sell it and just decide to do something else just for a challenge. The thing is, it's about job creation. See, people say get a job, but I'm like, well, you actually creating a job. Because when you are an entrepreneur, you actually creating that thing. And a lot of people don't get that. They think it's safe to, go out there and work for somebody. Really, it's not. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a little bit of what I used to do back in the day. It was, I'll just say, it was, unfortunately I can't, but it was a safe job, supposedly. And it was kind of doing some contracting work, right? But the contract ran out of money. All of a sudden, I was asked out. And this was supposed to be like a safe job. And I was just like, oh, snap. That's when I really realized. I was like, nah. There's no such thing as a safe job. There's no such thing. And then you have a lot of stuff out there. Automation, changing demographics that really affect whether or not you have a job. But the bottom line is, for somebody just to say, why don't you get a job? I mean, hey, it might not be easy, and it might actually be easier to start your own thing. Because think about it. An entrepreneur, depending on what they do, can actually create other jobs for people. I use a great example, a barber. Now, say a barber, gets a good clientele, managed to save some money, open up a shop. That barber actually creates jobs for other barbers, just by renting out the chair. You create jobs. See, the thing is, people gotta understand. It's not like, especially in the U.S., it's not like the period of time between 1945 and 1970. That was a golden age as far as prosperity. Basically, the U.S. was basically the number one product developer. You had the factories, everything, shipping them all over the world, until the rest of the world decided to catch up. Until the 90s when NAFTA came into play. And all of a sudden, some corporations say, hey, it's cheaper to ship this job to a third world country where we can pay them $1. And people will say, well, that's $1, but you gotta understand, some of those places, $1 go a long way because of exchange rates. And yeah, I need to do a video on that because there's a lot of little things people don't understand. Whatever the case, the jobs aren't here. So people really people really have to look into job creation. You know, when that relative or loved one says to you, why don't you get a job? You know what? Sit them down and say, well, where are the jobs? And you know what? If you want to do the research, just say, well, you know what? This industry is going down. Or what I know from a lot of jobs, a lot of people, even if they managers on jobs, especially in retail, I got to know a lot of people in retail. You know, their hours are cut. They ain't getting the hours. Even if they are called a manager or something, they barely making it. So, you know, that whole why don't you get a job thing. Well, no, I'm creating a job. In fact, I'm going to go into that in my next one. You know, I'm going to go into that whole thing in the next one. All right. So anyway, that's it for this one. Go out there and make that money.